The authorities plan to reassemble the skeletons and build a new temple to put them on display to attract visitors and make the community less dependent on fishing. So while this article talks about this religion in Vietnam being unique, they also refer to whale worship, and this being a unique version of whale worship. However, the whale worship is everywhere. This was a different form of it, where they take the whales in and they will keep their skeletons assembled, which is important. When I'm going to get to a point here in a minute. Not only that, they believe that they can communicate with these whales, and the whales, from that story, if it's true, show an incredible amount of intelligence, and not only that, they have empathy for another species that may be in danger, which is just amazing when you think about it. To be able to save a boat of fishermen in a dangerous storm it's just amazing. But this article made me start thinking about putting the connections together of how these communities were heavily worshiping these whale deities, and it also made me think of the whales found in Egypt, and this is in the Valley of the Whales, where they find all sorts of completed whale skeletons that are very old, with feet, and so they are considered to be the evolutionary link of land mammals to whales. This short description here, though, describes the whale as being serpentine and of a sea monster, and had short, sharp teeth for hunting sharks and other prey. So this was a very different kind of whale, and one can only imagine that those who had stumbled across these skeletons, it would only increase their imagination and have facts and evidence to add to their current mythologies, and you can start to see how things could evolve into almost a predatory sea monster that is attacking their existence and swallowing the sun and all this crazy garbage that they were told. But the article that blew me away, this is what blew me away, is the fact that there is a whale graveyard in Peru. And when we look at Peru, we already saw that the currents could take the fishermen or the travelers up directly to Peru. But not only that, you had in Atacama, we have the Atacama Giant. But in Atacama, in the desert, they found an amazing whale graveyard. And not only is it a whale graveyard, they are 75 fossils of completed skeletons that were lined up. They're in rows of bones of completed skeletons. Now, science is saying that these skeletons are over 2 million years old. However, I've heard on many occasions science claiming a particular species has been extinct, and it's been extinct for They've thought millions of years, and then they find it. They find it somewhere. It's a it washes up on the shore. Um, so you really can't. I would imagine, especially in the ocean, to be able to put a date on how old some of these things are. However, when you think of the fact that you have evidence of Aborigines making it to South America, and then you have all of these monuments, all of this interesting culture that has existed and is in Peru, and then you have the Atacama Giant, you have the Atacama Desert, and now you have lines and rows of completed whale skeletons. So it really appears that this culture had made its way over here, and they used these currents that existed. And back then, the ocean was not a hindrance, it was a highway. This allowed them to travel long distances. And so you can really see, you start seeing the connections of mythology, and you can start seeing the connections of history when you look at it at this point. And, could this be the navel of the sea? It lines up perfectly with our location of our intersection. So could this area in the South Pacific be the navel of the sea? And could this whale culture that exists in Vietnam today, could this have been, and could this be, an older culture, and it had existed for tens of thousands of years, and was this brought to the Americas? Because when I look at this, I don't think this is an accident. 75 complete whale skeletons in rows in the Atacama Desert. I think that's the smoking gun of this culture being in South America and extending their culture of the navel of the sea. And they had the ability to travel, and they knew the dimensions of the earth. They knew of the 33rd parallel, and that on the winter solstice they could measure solar elevation in the sky and know what their latitude was. Was this an important location for them? And I think it becomes obvious that they were here, and that these locations are much older. You didn't have Native Americans come up here, come all the way down, and then decide, oh, you know what? Let's just build some giant pyramids here. Why don't we have pyramids all along the West Coast if that were the case? It's not. They came here. They came from this direction. And that's why we have those whale skeletons. I think that's the smoking gun. I think that's what puts the pieces of the puzzle together. All right, guys, thanks for listening. I also wanted to add that I was looking into Sandra Lance, and I found a PDF article. I guess it's a book that she's written, and it's all about whale worship in Vietnam. And I found here in the book a list of the whales in the area. And the last whale was dugong, a dugong. And I immediately thought of the Dogon and their mythology, and Dagon, the name of the fish god, who later became the fish god. He was originally an agricultural god. But that name was so similar, I had to look into it. So I looked into the dugong, and here's what I came up with. They're actually related to the manatee, and most people know the manatee is connected with, mermaid and merman mythology. And if you look at some of these pictures, I mean, here, if you look at that picture, I mean, if you didn't know much and you saw this thing swim by and you saw the mouth, it almost looks like a human head here, where you could interpret that as some sort of, being, that there's some sort of sea creature being, and some sort of half man, half fish. And so it immediately takes you back to that religion, and that belief in this hybridized human. Um, and if we look at the Wikipedia map of the area and locations that these dugong are found, you can find them up here, right where Babylon and Sumeria existed. And so you can see that these creatures were present in that area, and it wouldn't have been very difficult for that mythology to exist. And in some cultures, these animals were revered, and in other countries, they were used to, play with the mythology, and make people think that these were actual mermaids. And in some cases, they were just important parts of the cultures that existed, such as with the Aborigines, that they were similar to what the buffalo were to the Native Americans. Um, and so in some instances they were prey. In other instances they were revered, and they're painted on 5,000-year-old wall paintings. And in other cases, I came across in China. It says here in southern China, dugongs were traditionally hunted for. I'm sorry. Dugongs were regarded as a miraculous fish, and it was bad luck to catch them. However, in the 1950s, uh, that ended due to a wave of immigration. I think it had to do with Mao Zedong and his revolution of the people and destroying of their culture. But it resulted in the dugongs being hunted for food. Um, but you can see that these were to some cultures extremely important fish, or mammals. And you can even see here dugong hides have been thought to have been used as the coverings in the building of the Old Testament portable worship tent known as the tabernacle. So you can see the religious significance to these creatures, and I just wanted to also share that information with you. I just wanted to also add that I wanted to remind some of you, or tell you for the first time, that the Rongo Rongo text that we find in Easter Island is related to the Indus Valley script. And you can see that in the iconography between the two languages. And really, it was heavily investigated in the 30s. However, it was really the idea of it was preposterous, because these two locations are found halfway around the world, and so it was really abandoned. However, I believe, how I'm showing this evolution of the mythology myth, especially with the navel of the sea, and the origins of the sea creature that's in all mythologies across the world. We're seeing its origins, and we're seeing the interconnectedness between these cultures now. And now we can put our thumb on Easter Island and the Indus Valley and say that these two were related, and its origins came from this area. This was Atlantis, and this was the origins of all myths that then soon traveled westward.